Complete whitewash. Good morning, I hope everyone's well today. Thank you for watching as always. The inquiry, or at least the first part of the inquiry into the Southport massacre or atrocity that happened in 2024 has been released. And I want to go through some of the findings. Now, just to set expectation, this isn't a deep dive. I'm not a analyst in that particular way, but I'm going to give some opinions on what I think isn't going to happen. The inquiry has pointed to certain failures on the back of what happened with that monster attacking those little girls up in Southport. There's 5 fundamental failures that have been brought to light so far from the inquiry chair. Absence of risk ownership. No single agency or multi-agency group took overall responsibility, assessing or managing the clear and escalating risk that AR, Axel Ridder-Cabana, posed to others. He fell between the gaps, or they chose to look another way. The teacher or one of his teachers was pounded and says you cannot imply that just because this black person, this disturbed person has a knife, or has brought knives into schools, that is going to create a problem down the line. That would be racist. That's one of the things. They were scared of being called racist. And now little children are no longer with us because of that. That's disgusting. That anyone, either in government or positions of authority, can be allowed to do that. Racism, yeah, okay, that's bad, that's wrong. I think the unaliving of little children is much, much worse than that. The brutal murder of those children and many others with life-changing injuries is far worse than being accused of being racist, in my view. So we'll continue. Critical failures in information sharing. Key details were lost, diluted, or poorly handled in between police, prevent, social services, education, health, and youth justice. Why? Because when the state does anything, it does it pretty badly. Nobody is going to safeguard your own family and your own relatives better than you. It's the same in hospitals, it's the same when giving care to anybody or assessing anybody for risk or potential risk to your family. Nobody's going to do a better job of that than yourself. If the state does anything, it does it pretty badly. That's why I think a small state is desirable. Everything should be handled on the local level, and only inform the state and the government if you need to. We can keep our communities safer than elected politicians who are distanced from us will ever achieve. It's just something that's baked in. That's not me saying we need to be vigilantes, alright? That's just me saying that local people in local areas will be more effective at making decisions, keeping people safe, than the higher ups, because they're insulated. So we'll get on to the next bit now. Third, misunderstanding or excusing behaviour due to autism. AR's dangerous actions were repeatedly attributed to his autism spectrum disorder, leading to an inaction instead of proper risk management. Okay, so he's black, he's violent, he's autistic, and so that cannot mean he's going to be a threat to society. Sounds reasonable. No, it doesn't. That's me being sarcastic. Alright, this should have been nipped in the bud before the bud nipped us, in my particular view. Failure to examine online activity. Okay, that's where the Online Safety Act is going to get baked into it. Nothing's going to change. And then finally, parental failures. As with all else, blame the parents. Now, I do have an issue with the parents we'll get to in a moment also. But I've made posts about this previously and videos about this. What you've had is the outsourcing of the education of children and what children can and can't do in their own homes, where the parents are no longer the head of the household, to the state. You can't even discipline, and I don't mean hitting children, although a light slap never did me any harm. I don't mean that in particular. I mean any level of discipline can be effective, whether it's assertive discipline, like we got in high school with names on the board and then detentions when our actions have consequences, that causality, or, a little a light tap if they do something, you know what I mean? That's all been taken away, and it's all been put into the hands of the state, and as I previously mentioned, that always goes badly. So, like the Manchester Evening News bombing, lessons will be learned never again until the next time. It's not acceptable. It's completely unacceptable. It is a disgrace. And nothing's going to change until the framework that we're operating within in Britain changes, which I'll get to later in the video. Comment below if you think I'm right on this, by the way, and as I say, do that good stuff, do the gravy, like and subscribe if you think I'm adding value. Let me get on to this. AR repeated contacts with state services from the age of 13. Prevent referrals 2019 to 2021. Police, courts, youth justice, social care, mental health all didn't act. He had a history of violence, threats, weapon possession going back years. The report is 700 pages with 67 recommendations. None are going to be implemented, and it's not going to be done quickly. Phase 2 later this year will look after a wider range of young people obsessed with extreme violence. None of this is going to change anything. Look at the CAS report that was commissioned under the Tories with certain child protection issues, including brief reference to grooming gangs. None of that's been implemented yet. And it's nearly a decade later, if not over a decade later, and none of that's been implemented yet because of the snail's pace. There's no desire to change anything, and this will happen again and again and again. Now, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson's recently sacked a PE teacher for wrong speak. I'm going to get into this. I didn't do a video at the time, but it links into this, so I'll mention it now. PE teacher banned after calling migrants illegal invaders on X despite being cleared of racism. So he said only Britain First would do anything about the migrant invasion. I think he changed his tune now. I think Restore Britain would do something, and I think he would agree with that, the teacher. But he's been sacked anyway. So there was like a board, a disciplinary panel on the back of his wrong speak or misconduct that recommended that he retains his job and he can stay in the profession. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, overruled that decision and said, no, wrong speak, he's racist, we don't actually agree with you, we think that you're not giving sufficient weight to what he said online, and he's lost his job, and he can't actually teach I think it's for up to 3 years before he can reapply. And these are the people that are in charge of the country, and they're saying that lessons are going to be learned about the way that Prevents and all of these organisations didn't intervene in Axel Ridder-Cabana's case, and you think that this mindset of sacking good teachers because they speak things that you don't want to be spoken about, you think these people are going to do something about it? I don't. I'm calling bullshit on that, pardon the language. I'm calling that out. It's not going to happen. The framework, this post-World War II framework, needs to change. This is my opinion. It's interfering with policy, it's interfering with democracy, it's interfering with right from wrong. I would rather live next door to a racist, to be honest, than somebody that would do what this Welsh choir boy did to those little girls in Southport. It's as simple as that. And the final thing that only Restore Britain is mentioning so far, but it's something that I've mentioned on my channel previously, so I'm going to bring it up again. I brought it up after the atrocity and I'll keep on bringing it up. His parents, Axel Ridder-Cabana's parents, were refugees from Rwanda. They were brought into our country under a refugee scheme. Apart from Rupert Lowe, I've not heard one politician talk about reviewing the framework for our refugee policy. Why were his parents brought into the country? Under what conditions? Were they on side A of the revolution in Rwanda or the other side? Did they have a history of violence? What measures were put into their background to check their background before they were given authority to live in this United Kingdom? Well, I've heard nothing about any of that. That framework is still in place. How many other people with potentially lethal or dangerous backgrounds have been let into the country, not just across the channel, but in safe and legal routes, like Axel Ridder-Cabana's parents? How many that we don't know about? How many happen every day or every year that are just hushed up, that we don't actually speak about? These are questions that we should be asking. Not going to change until we root out the framework and change the framework that's governing our country. The guardrails on the democracy need to go. These are just my thoughts as always. Like and subscribe, do all that great stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good day.